My mother-in-law offered to babysit every week. 3 years later, I found out what she was teaching my children while I was at work. I want to start by saying I am not someone who jumps to conclusions. I am not a suspicious person by nature. I gave my mother-in-law 3 years of trust, 3 years of thank yous and home-cooked dinners left in the fridge for her, and genuine gratitude for the help she offered. I was a working mother with 2 kids and a full-time job, and she showed up every week and said, "Let me help." I said yes. I said thank you. I never once thought to ask what was happening in my own living room while I was gone. I should have paid attention sooner, but I am paying attention now, and that is what this story is about. Let me tell you what our life looked like 3 years ago. My name is Rachel. I am 43 years old, and I work as a project manager at a mid-sized logistics company in Cincinnati. My husband is Daniel, Dan to everyone who knows him, and he works in sales, which means his schedule is unpredictable in that particular way that sales schedules are unpredictable. Some weeks he is home by 5. Other weeks he is on the road Tuesday through Thursday, and I am running the house alone. We have 2 kids, Caleb, who is now 10, and Maya, who just turned 7. They are different in every way that 2 children from the same parents can be different. Caleb is quiet and observant and reads constantly. Maya is loud and funny and has never once in her 7 years done anything quietly. I love them both completely and specifically in the way you love people whose particular shapes you know by heart. 3 years ago, Caleb was 7 and Maya was 4, and I had just gone back to full-time after a period of reduced hours that my company had allowed, but that was not sustainable financially long-term. Going back full-time meant figuring out after-school care for Caleb and afternoon care for Maya, whose preschool ended at noon. My mother-in-law, Patricia, Pat to most people, though I always called her Patricia because that is how she introduced herself and she never corrected me, offered the solution before I had finished explaining the problem. She called on a Sunday evening. Dan and I were doing dishes and he had mentioned to her earlier that week that we were trying to figure out childcare logistics, and she had apparently been thinking about it since then. "I can come on Tuesdays and Thursdays," she said. "Pick Maya up from preschool. Be there when Caleb gets off the bus. Stay until one of you gets home." I stood at the sink and felt something loosen in my chest. 2 days a week covered. Tuesdays and Thursdays. The days Dan was most often traveling. "Patricia, that would be incredibly helpful," I said. "They're my grandchildren," she said simply. "It's not a favor. It's what grandmothers do." I believed her. I want to be clear about that. I believed her completely, and I was grateful completely, and for a long time I had no reason to be anything else. Patricia is 64 years old. She lives 20 minutes from us in a house she has kept exactly the same since Dan grew up in it. Same furniture arrangement, same curtains, same ceramic rooster on the kitchen counter that Dan has been gently mocking his entire adult life. She is organized and capable and has opinions about most things which she shares directly, and without much preamble. I had always found her directness easier to navigate than the passive variety. At least with Patricia, you always knew where you stood. Or I thought I did. She started coming that September. Tuesdays and Thursdays without fail. She was never late, never canceled, never made me feel like it was an imposition. She picked Maya up, got Caleb off the bus, had snacks ready, helped with homework, had the kitchen tidied by the time I got home. From the outside, it looked exactly like what she had said it was. A grandmother helping? What grandmothers do. The kids loved it. Caleb loved showing her his books, and she listened with genuine interest especially when, the book was about something she had no previous knowledge of. Maya loved having an audience, and Patricia was an attentive one. I would come home to the sound of Maya telling some elaborate story, while Patricia sat at the kitchen table with her hands folded, giving Maya her full attention. It looked like love. I think parts of it were love. That is the complicated part. The first thing I noticed, and I want to be honest that I noticed it and set it aside, was a comment Caleb made about 6 months in. We were at the grocery store on a Saturday morning, just the 2 of us, and he was helping me pick out apples the way he had since he was small, very seriously, examining each one. And out of nowhere, he said, "Grandma Pat says you work too much." I kept my hand on an apple. "Does she?" She says moms who work a lot miss things. He said it matter-of-factly, the way 7-year-olds say things. Without editorial, just reporting. She said her friend Karen's daughter works a lot and her kids have problems at school. I put the apples in the bag. "What do you think?" I asked. He thought about it seriously. "I think you work the right amount," he said, "because we have a good house." I smiled at him and we moved on to the oranges, and I filed it away under things I would think about later. Patricia had opinions about working mothers. I had known that. It was not new information. I told myself it was generational. I told myself she meant well. I told myself a lot of things. The second thing happened 2 months after that. Maya came home from preschool on a Thursday. Patricia had picked her up, and at dinner she said, "Grandma says I'm the pretty one and Caleb is the smart one." Dan looked up from his plate. I set my fork down. "She said that?" I asked carefully. Maya nodded, completely unbothered. already moving on to eating her pasta. She says pretty girls have to be careful about being too loud. I looked at my 4-year-old daughter, who had never done a single thing quietly in her life, and felt something move through me that was not quite anger yet, but was in the same neighborhood. Dan said, "I'll talk to her. What will you say?" I asked. He looked at me. "I'll tell her not to say stuff like that." "Okay," I said. He did talk to her. I know because he told me he had, and Patricia had said she was just being playful and didn't mean anything by it. Dan had accepted that. I had accepted that Dan had accepted that. And we moved on, but I started paying a different kind of attention after that. I want to tell you what paying a different kind of attention looked like in practice. I started coming home a little earlier when I could. Not dramatically, and 15-20 minutes. Enough to catch the end of the afternoon instead of just the tidy version Patricia left behind. Enough to hear the tail end of conversations instead of the silence that followed them. What I heard in those extra minutes was not dramatic. That is the thing I need you to understand. There was no single moment, no obvious scene. Just small things. The way Patricia would tell Maya to sit with her legs together when she was on the couch. Young ladies sit properly. The way she would tell Caleb that Daniel had always been better at math than English, and wasn't it funny that Caleb was the same? The way she would say things like, "Your mom is very busy," in a tone that made busy sound like a choice that had consequences. Small things. The kind of small things that by themselves mean nothing and together mean everything. Started writing them down. I kept a notes app on my phone. Nothing formal, just dates and what was said and which child had told me. By the end of the 3rd month of paying attention, I had 14 entries. 14 small moments that individually I could have explained away, and together formed a picture I could not unsee. I showed the list to my friend Donna on a Wednesday evening over coffee, and she read through every entry without saying anything. And when she looked up, she said, "Rachel, how long has this been going on?" 3 years, I said. She put her coffee down. 3 years, she said back to me, and I heard it differently when she said it. I need to tell you about the Tuesday I came home an hour early. It was not planned. A meeting had been canceled last minute, and I had another one at 3, so going back to the office made no sense. I texted Dan to let him know I was heading home, and I did not text Patricia because it did not occur to me to text Patricia. It was my house. It was 2 in the afternoon. I pulled into the driveway and sat for a moment, finishing a work call in the car. 5 minutes, maybe 6. Then I gathered my bag and went to the front door and put my key in the lock quietly, the way you do when you do not want to interrupt whatever is happening inside before you know what it is. The door opened quietly. I could hear Patricia's voice from the living room. She was talking to Maya. I could tell from the rhythm of it, the particular cadence of an adult talking to a small child. I stood in the hallway and I listened. "Your mommy loves you," Patricia was saying, "but mommies who work all day get tired. And when mommies get tired, they don't always have time to really listen. That's why it's good that grandma comes. Grandma always has time to listen." A pause. Maya said something I couldn't quite hear. "That's right," Patricia said. "Grandma is always here, even when mommy can't be." I stood in my own hallway with my keys in my hand. Even when mommy can't be. I did not walk into the living room right away. I stood there for another moment because I needed to be sure of what I was feeling before I did anything with it. Not anger, not yet, or not only. Something more complicated. The specific feeling of understanding that something you trusted has been operating differently than you believed. I walked into the living room. Patricia looked up. Her expression shifted, just slightly, just for a second, and then arranged itself back into its normal composure. "Rachel, you're home early. Meeting canceled," I said. I looked at Maya, who had launched herself off the couch and was wrapping herself around my legs. I picked her up. "Hi, baby. Grandma and I were talking," Maya announced. "I heard," I said. I looked at Patricia over Maya's head. "Can I get you some coffee, Patricia? I should actually get going," she said. She gathered her things with the efficient movements of a woman who had somewhere to be. At the door, she turned and said, "The kids had a good afternoon. Caleb's upstairs reading." "Thank you," I said, because I did not know yet what else to say. I closed the door and stood in my hallway for the second time that afternoon. The conversation with Dan happened that night after the kids were in bed. I want to be fair to Dan because he is not a bad person, and this is not a story about a bad husband. He is a person who loves his mother and finds it genuinely difficult to hold 2 true things about her at the same time: that she loves their children and that she is doing something that is not okay. Most people find that difficult. Dan finds it especially difficult because Patricia raised him alone after his father left when Dan was 11, and he has never fully separated gratitude from loyalty. I showed him the notes app, all 14 entries plus the hallway conversation which I had added that afternoon while making dinner. He read through it slowly. I watched his face, the slight tightening around his eyes that meant he was uncomfortable, the way he set the phone down more carefully than necessary when he finished. "The hallway thing bothers me," he said. It all bothers me, I said. But the other stuff, the pretty one and the smart one, the legs together thing, I talked to her about that. She said she'd stop. Dan, I kept my voice level. She did not stop. It's in the notes. 3 weeks after you talked to her, she told Caleb that boys who read too much have trouble making friends. He was quiet. This is a pattern, I said. Not one comment. A pattern over 3 years that I have been noticing and setting aside and making excuses for, and I am done making excuses for it. What are you saying you want to do? I want to talk to her, I said. Directly. Not you talking to her and relaying back. Me, her, a real conversation. Dan looked at the table. I knew this look, and the look of a man trying to find a way to protect two people he loved from a conversation he knew was necessary. She's going to be defensive, he said. I know. It might make things difficult for a while. Dan. I looked at him. Things are already difficult. I'm just the only one who has been noticing. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, okay, he said. Talk to her. I'll support whatever you decide. It was the right answer. It came slowly, but it came. I called Patricia the next morning. I had thought about what I wanted to say the way I thought about difficult work conversations. Clearly. Specifically, without leaving room for the kind of vagueness that allows people to later claim they misunderstood. I did not want to be angry. Anger would give her something to react to instead of something to hear. She picked up on the second ring. Patricia, I said, I want to come over Saturday morning. There are some things I'd like to talk to you about. Just the two of us. A pause. Is everything all right? Everything is fine, I said. I just think we're overdue for a real conversation. Another pause. Longer this time. The pause of a woman who had been expecting this call in some form for longer than she would admit. Saturday is fine, she said. I'll make coffee. I want to tell you what I did between Wednesday and Saturday. I talked to my friend Donna again. She has 2 kids of her own and a mother-in-law situation she describes as actively managed, which I had always found slightly funny and now found purely instructive. She listened to the hallway conversation and the notes and the Dan conversation, and she said, the thing that strikes me most is the consistency. She has been doing this every week for 3 years. That is not careless. That is deliberate. I had thought that too, but hearing someone else say it made it land more solidly. I also talked to Caleb, not about Patricia directly. He is 10 and I was not going to put him in the middle of an adult situation. But I sat with him on his bed one evening while he was reading and I said, hey, can I ask you something? He put his book down. He is that kind of kid. When you ask for his attention, he gives it fully. Has Grandma Pat ever said things to you that made you feel weird? Not bad weird necessarily, just like you weren't sure what to do with what she said? He thought about it seriously. Caleb always thinks seriously. Sometimes, he said carefully. She says stuff about you sometimes. About how you're always working. What kind of stuff? Like, he paused, like she'll say something nice first, like you're a good mom. And then she'll say, and the but part is always about working. He looked at me. I don't think she means to be mean, but the but part feels bad. I looked at my 10-year-old son who had just described something with more precision than most adults manage. Thank you for telling me that, I said. Are you going to talk to her? Yes, I said. He nodded and picked his book back up. Then he looked over the top of it and said, she does love us, Mom. I know that part is real. I know it is too, I said, and I did know that. That was the part that made Saturday necessary and also hard. I drove to Patricia's house Saturday morning with a coffee I had made at home because I needed something to do with my hands on the drive. I had not written anything down this time. No list, no bullet points. What I wanted to say did not need notes. It had been living in me for 3 years, and it knew its own shape by now. I pulled into her driveway and sat for a moment. The ceramic rooster was visible through the kitchen window. Same house, same curtains, same woman inside who loved my children, and had been slowly, carefully, deliberately telling them things I had never agreed to. I got out of the car, walked to the door, knocked. I always knocked at Patricia's, even after all these years, because she had that kind of house. She opened the door before I finished knocking. She had been waiting. We both had. I want to tell you about Patricia's kitchen. I have sat in that kitchen more times than I can count over the 12 years Dan and I have been together. Holiday dinners, Sunday visits, the occasional weeknight when we brought the kids over and everyone ate takeout at the kitchen table. I know that kitchen the way you know a place you have never fully belonged to but have spent enough time in to memorize. The ceramic rooster, the curtains with the small yellow pattern, the coffee maker that is older than my marriage and makes excellent coffee despite its age. She had the coffee ready when I came in, 2 cups already poured. She knew how I took it. She had always paid attention to small details like that. We sat across from each other and for a moment neither of us said anything. The kitchen was quiet. Outside, a lawnmower started up somewhere down the street and then stopped. I want to talk to you about what I heard Tuesday, I said, and about some other things that have been building for a while. Patricia wrapped both hands around her mug. She did not say anything yet. She was waiting to understand what she was dealing with before she responded. I recognized that because I did the same thing. I told her about the hallway, exactly what I had heard, in the order I had heard it. I kept my voice even and my words specific, and I did not editorialize, just what was said. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I didn't know you were there." "I know," I said. "That's part of why it matters." She looked at her coffee. "I was not trying to undermine you, Rachel. Tell me what you were trying to do," I said, "because I want to understand it from your side." She looked up. I think the question surprised her. She had been braced for accusation, and I had asked for explanation instead. I wanted to hear her say it, not because I was going to accept it as justification, but because I needed to understand what I was actually dealing with. She took a breath. "I worry about them," she said. "When you are both gone, when the house is empty and they are here with me, I see how much they miss you. Maya especially. She talks about you constantly. Everything is mommy this, mommy that, and She stopped, started again. "I think I have been trying to fill something. Make myself more necessary than I am, and I know how that sounds." I sat with that for a moment. The comments about working too much, I said. The pretty one and the smart one. Telling Caleb that boys who read too much have trouble making friends. Were those filling something too? She was quiet. The lawnmower outside started again. "My mother told me I was the smart one," she said finally, her exact words. Every time someone complimented my sister, she would say, "But Patricia is the smart one." I thought it was a kindness. I thought I was passing something on. She paused. "I can hear how that sounds now that I'm saying it out loud. It sounds like something that hurt you that you passed on without realizing it," I said. She looked at me. Something moved across her face. Surprised maybe that I had said that instead of something sharper. "The working too much comments," I said. "Those are harder for me to extend the same understanding to." She nodded slowly. "I know. Because those are not about your childhood," I said. "Those are about me, and what you think about me, and what you have been communicating to my children about me while I was trusting you with them." She was quiet for a long time. "I raised Daniel alone," she said finally. "After Robert left, I worked a lot. I had to. And Daniel missed things. He didn't say so. He was a good kid and he didn't complain. But I know he missed things. I know there were moments I wasn't there for." She looked at her hands. "When I see you working the same hours I worked, I see what I was. And I think I have been taking that out on you, and that is not fair. And I am sorry." The kitchen was very quiet. I had come here prepared for defensiveness, for the particular defensive crouch of a woman who believed she was helping and could not understand why that was being questioned. I had not prepared for this, for a woman sitting across a kitchen table telling me something true about herself at some cost. It did not make everything okay. I want to be clear about that, but it changed the shape of the conversation. We talked for 2 hours, not always comfortably. There were moments where the conversation got tight and careful, and we both had to slow down and choose words deliberately. There were things I said that landed hard, and things she said that I had to sit with before I could respond to. There were silences that were not empty. I told her what Caleb had said. The but part always feels bad. She was quiet for a long time after that. I told her that I needed the Tuesday and Thursday visits to change, not end. I was not there to take her grandchildren away from her, and I said that directly. But change. What happened in my house while I was at work needed to look different. She asked me what that meant specifically. I told her. Clearly and specifically the way I had thought about it on the drive over. No comments about my working hours. Not framed as concern. Not framed as observation. Not framed as anything. No labels for the children, not pretty one or smart one or quiet one or any category that put them in a box. No, but statements about me or Dan or our choices. And the thing I needed most, if she had feelings about how we were raising our children, she needed to bring them to Dan and me directly. Not to our 7-year-old, not to our 10-year-old, to us. She listened to all of it without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "That is fair." 3 words. "No, but after them." "I need you to mean that," I said. "Not just say it." "I know the difference," she said quietly. "I am 64 years old, and I know the difference between meaning something and saying it." She looked at me. "I mean it, Rachel." I believed her. Not entirely. Not with the uncomplicated trust I had arrived with 3 years ago, but enough to build something different on. I drove home and sat in my driveway for a few minutes before going inside. Dan was in the kitchen when I came in, coffee in hand, trying to read something on his phone with the distracted energy of a man who had been waiting and trying not to visibly wait. He looked up when I came in. "How did it go?" he asked. I sat down at the kitchen table. "Better than I expected," I said, "and harder than I expected." Both at the same time. He sat down across from me. "What did she say?" I told him. Not everything. Some of it felt like it belonged to the conversation I'd had with Patricia and did not need to be fully transferred. But enough. The childhood detail. The working mother parallel she had drawn. The 3 words at the end. Dan was quiet for a while after I finished. "I didn't know about the smart one thing," he said, with her and her sister. I don't think she'd ever said it out loud before, I said. He nodded slowly. She means it, he said. When she says she means something, she means it. Whatever else. That part I know about her. I believe you, I said. We sat at the kitchen table for a while after that, not talking about anything in particular, just sitting. The house was quiet, the kids were upstairs. The afternoon was doing that thing Ohio afternoons do in autumn, where the light goes gold and everything looks softer than it is. Thank you for going, Dan said finally. Thank you for letting me, I said. The following Tuesday, Patricia arrived at the usual time. I was still home. I had arranged my morning so I could be there for the first 30 minutes. She came in, said hello to Maya, who immediately began telling her something elaborate about a dream she had, and went about the business of the afternoon. Before I left, I stood in the kitchen doorway, and she looked at me and something passed between us. Not warmth exactly, not yet, but something honest. An acknowledgement. A new set of terms neither of us had to say out loud because we had already said them on Saturday. I drove to work. I did not write anything in the notes app that day, or the Tuesday after that. It has been 6 months since the Saturday conversation. Want to be honest with you about what 6 months looks like, because I think there is a version of this story where I tell you everything is fixed and Patricia is transformed, and we all sit around the kitchen table now in a warm glow of mutual understanding. That version would be easier to write and more satisfying to read, and it would not be true. Here is what is true. Patricia comes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She is on time and she is present and she takes care of my children with genuine love. I know it is genuine because I know what genuine looks like after 12 years of watching her with Dan and with the kids. Love was never the question. Love was always there. The question was what it came with attached. What has changed is the attached part. I have not added a single entry to my notes app in 6 months. I want to say that clearly because it matters. Not one comment about my working hours. Not one label for the children. Not one but statement delivered over a 7-year-old's head. Whatever Patricia took from our Saturday conversation, she took it seriously. That is not nothing. That is actually significant. The thing with Maya happened about 2 months after the Saturday conversation. I was putting her to bed. The whole routine, which with Maya requires negotiation at every stage. Pajamas, teeth, one book which always becomes 2, water, the specific blanket arrangement which changes every night according to rules. Only Maya fully understands. We were finally at the lights out stage and she was quiet. For a moment in that way she gets sometimes when something is working its way to the surface. Mom? She said. Yeah, baby. Are you happy when you go to work? I looked at her in the dim light. 7 years old, her hair still slightly damp from the bath, looking at me with those direct eyes that have been direct since the day she was born. Why are you asking? I said. She was quiet for a moment. Grandma used to say stuff about you working. I can't remember exactly what. She paused, but it made me feel like maybe you didn't want to be home. I sat down on the edge of her bed. I thought about the notes app. 14 entries over 3 years. All the small things I had been noticing and setting aside. I thought about Caleb saying the but part always feels bad. I thought about standing in my hallway on a Tuesday afternoon listening to Even When Mommy Can't Be. Here is what I thought about most. My daughter was 7 years old and she had been carrying a question about whether her mother wanted to be home. I love my work, I said carefully. It is something I am good at, and it makes me feel like myself in a way that matters, and I also love being home. Those two things are both completely true, and they do not cancel each other out. I looked at her. Coming home to you and your brother is the best part of every day. That has never changed. That will never change. Maya thought about this seriously. So you want to be here, she said. Always, I said. I always want to be here. She nodded like something had been settled. Then, Grandma doesn't say that stuff anymore. I know, I said. Did you talk to her? Yes, she nodded again. Then she pulled her blanket up in the specific arrangement of that particular night and said, okay, you can turn the light off now. I turned the light off, stood in the doorway for a moment. Mom, Maya said from the dark. Yeah, I'm glad you talked to her. Me too, baby. I said, me too. I want to tell you about a Sunday about a month ago. We had dinner at Patricia's, the whole family. Me and Dan and the kids, the same way we had been doing since before Caleb was born. The ceramic rooster on the counter. The curtains with the small yellow pattern. Patricia's cooking, which has always been genuinely excellent and which I have always genuinely appreciated. After dinner, Dan and Patricia were doing dishes, and I was at the kitchen table helping Caleb with something on his tablet, and Maya was in the living room doing something that involved a lot of sound effects. An ordinary Sunday. Patricia came and sat next to me at the kitchen table while Dan finished up at the sink. She had a dish towel over her shoulder the way she always did when she was between tasks. She did not say anything for a moment, just sat. I kept helping Caleb. Then she said quietly, so only I could hear, she's doing well, Maya. She seems lighter than she was a few months ago. I looked at her. I think so too. too, I said. Patricia nodded, looked at the table. I have been thinking about what you said, about bringing things to you and Dan directly instead of, she paused, instead of the other way. Okay, I said. I have some thoughts about Caleb's reading, whether he might benefit from something more challenging. I wondered if you'd thought about it. I looked at my 10-year-old son who read constantly and seriously and always had. Tell me what you're thinking, I said. She told me. It was a reasonable observation delivered as an observation. Not a verdict, not a but statement, not something that arrived through Caleb first. Just a grandmother who had been paying attention saying what she noticed to the parent it was meant for. I'll look into it, I said. Thank you for saying something. She went back to the kitchen. I sat at the table with Caleb. He looked up from his tablet. What were you and Grandma talking about? You, I said. He made the face 10-year-olds make when they discover they have been discussed. What about me? Good things, I said. He went back to his tablet, unconvinced but willing to let it go, which is very Caleb. Here is what I know now that I did not know 3 years ago. Watching someone love your children is not the same as knowing what that love looks like when you are not in the room. I had made the mistake of assuming they were the same thing. I had been so grateful for the help and so tired in the way that working mothers are tired that I had not asked the question I should have asked much sooner. Not whether Patricia loved them, but how that love was expressing itself on a Tuesday afternoon in my living room. The Notes app is still on my phone. I have not deleted it. Not because I'm waiting to add to it, but because it represents something I want to remember. That paying attention is not the same as suspicion. That noticing things and writing them down and taking them seriously is not a betrayal of trust. It is a form of taking care. I am still a working mother. I am at my desk most days by 8:30, and I leave at 5, and I am good at what I do, and that still matters to me. Maya knows I want to be home. Caleb knows the but part has stopped. These things are real, and they were earned through a Saturday conversation in a kitchen that smelled like coffee and something complicated. Patricia and I are not what I would call close. We are something more honest than we were, and I think that is actually better than the version of close we had before, which was built. Partly on my willingness to overlook things, and partly on her willingness to not examine things. What we are now has more friction and more reality, and I trust it more. Last Tuesday, I came home at the regular time. Patricia was in the kitchen with Maya, who was telling her something elaborate, and Patricia was listening with her full attention the way she always had. She looked up when I came in. Good day? Decent, I said. You? Good, she said. Maya has some strong opinions about the correct way to sort colored pencils. We've been discussing it. Maya looked at me very seriously. There is a correct way, Mom. I don't doubt it, I said. I put my bag down, washed my hands, stood in my kitchen that smelled like whatever Patricia had left warming in the oven. Not perfect. Not the same as before. Something more honest than either of those things. My family doing what families do. Working through it. Still here.